So Brian came to BA with a product in development. It was it was an idea, right?
Concept.
That you were running with and developing at the time. Brian has run big pools of sales representatives and customer service representatives out of Costa Rica, right? You did that for how long?
17 years.
17 years. This man knows how to have a sales conversation. And then he thought to himself, what would happen if I could build a computer that could have the sales conversation, and instead of one person having a conversation one-on-one, I could have a computer that has 5,000 or 10,000 sales conversations simultaneously. Wouldn't that be amazing? If you had asked me, I would have said, no can do. Like there's just, I can't even imagine, that is so next, like that's space age stuff.
I was told to stop smoking it.
Yeah. And you did it.
I did it, yes.
You did it.
Absolutely.
And you've had an enormous amount of success.
We're having fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm anxious to hear the update.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Brian Podolak.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Oh, hey, Dad, how you doing? Dad, you're not going to believe this. November the 7th, Board of Advisors is having another session, and they asked me to do the opening. I couldn't believe it, Dad. On your birthday yet. So I just figured November 7th being your birthday, Dad, me being able to go up here and have the beginning of the sessions, that I would get your advice on what I should talk about. Is that all right? Do you have a minute? Okay, cool, Dad. So here's my thought is, I was thinking about talking about how to scale sales teams and scale sales, but that gets kind of boring. But then I said, you know what? Maybe it'd be better if we talked about science and proving things beyond a shadow of a doubt instead of just opinions. What are your thoughts on that, Dad? I know it's nerdy, Dad, but you know me, so. Okay, yeah, so Dad, this is what I was thinking. I thought I would get like a 10-foot long plastic bag without a 12-inch opening, and I would just go ahead and blow it up as the beginning. So it's something like this, and you know, Dad, like how you would fill up a paper bag, you just pull it up and you start filling it up. Well, Dad, that's going to take a while to do that. I mean, there's a little air going in, and I'm sure if I keep going, it'll fill up, but it's going to take some time, Dad, so maybe there's something different we could do. What do you think? Hopefully the clicker works, Dad. Of course not. All right, so we're going to pretend there's no clicker, Dad. It's even more exciting that way. All right, there it goes. I was going impatient. Let's talk about the Bernoulli Principle in sales. And Dad, I think they'll get excited about that, right? No? All right, well, maybe we'll just talk about what a principle is, and hopefully we'll get a clicker that is just reacting to me a little quicker next time. That's okay, because that's the thing about live. Oh, is that over there? Ah, okay. Dad, I'm sure they're going to throw a little couple things at me just to make it a little more exciting. So we remember that in science, a principle is something that's a fact. Sometimes it's even called a law, which means if we hear something that's called a principle, we should accept it as fact. We shouldn't guess that it's not just a theory or somebody's idea. So we know that. So I think we'll go ahead and son of a biscuit, Dad, we're going to have some fun on this one. Where's it? That way? Where? There? No? All right. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Okay, I just broke everything, Dad. So at any rate, I'm sure this is going to happen. So I figure what we'll do is we'll start off by pulling up an equation and showing Bernoulli's principle and explain it to everybody, but no, that's not good. Let's do something different. The Bernoulli Principle was actually a study of fluid dynamics from the late 1700s, and a couple hundred years later, we discovered that this is how airplanes fly. This is the actual principle of flight. And Dad, I'm going to get a clicker that works. I promise I will during this thing. And we'll be able to go to the next slide. Right here we go.
Try that one.
And I'm sure they'll give me a different clicker. There we go. There we go. Science. AI works better than clickers half the time, FYI. But at any rate, here's the great thing about the study of thermodynamics and all this other good stuff is basically that, basically if we have a airplane wing and one side's flat and one side's curved and the air goes faster over one side, it lifts off, and I don't know, that kind of gets confusing. But I remember this, Dad. I remember that when I used to take a shower and I would turn on the water, the shower current would just suck right onto my body immediately, right? Because when I turned on that shower head, I got some fast-moving air on one side, and on the other side, I got non-moving or very slow-moving air, and there's an example of the Bernoulli Principle, right? That shower curtain just sucking right to me. And of course, you and Mom taught me that if I kept the door open a little bit, turned that fan on in the bathroom, it would never stick to me, which was great. But you also remember that little toy I had? Oh, there we go, 20 minutes later. So remember also that little toy I had where I would go ahead and I would blow and the ball would spin around? That was another example of Bernoulli's Principle. So this is interesting. So what we basically have discovered is that this basic principle applies to the smallest of airplanes or the largest jumbo jets, which means if we have a sales process in its simplest form, and we want to sell a $1 deal or a $100 billion deal, it's the same principle, which means maybe there's a way to work smarter and not harder. So instead of saying, hey, to increase our sales process, I need to hire more salespeople, is that always the case? Now, I could get 10 people to help me blow this up, or we could apply what we learned from the Bernoulli Principle and see if we could fill it up by ourselves, but a little quicker. I got it. Dad, you're right, because when I'm blowing into the bag, I'm making my life harder when all I have to do is something like this and fill up the bag in seconds. Because what we're learning is we have lift on the other side to help us, which means if we have the right principles, I can fill that bag with money a lot easier by myself with some basic principles and working smarter than trying to get a whole bunch of people. So that same principle is going to help us in sales, but what are those basic principles? What is a good example of a basic principle? Well, Dad, here's what I've been seeing. I see a lot of salespeople have told me this. Man, I just had my best month ever. Followed by, wow, this is one of the worst months I've ever had in my life. Has anybody had a great big deal happen? And then the next deal, not so hot of a month, right? That's happened to us all. And Dad, I remember when I was talking to you, you told me why. You said it's because you got sucked up. You got sucked in to handling this big deal, and you weren't handling anything else. So now that it's closed, you've got to start over almost, right? So how do I make sure that I don't have these ebb and flows with some basic principles? And I like dashboards and numbers, Dad. So maybe I'll put some examples up. And you, all right, yeah, go ahead, Dad. All right, great. So Dad, what I realized was when we started Vocodia, nobody knew about AI. Nobody knew the technology existed. And my first few sales calls went horribly wrong. I remember Jimmy laughing at me after one demonstration where we got kicked out of the meeting and being accused of fraud because they thought the AI was actually me just talking to a call center agent. So we've gone through some things, but at the end of the day, there's something I've noticed in 17 years. In any business-to-business campaign we've ever done, there's a couple rules that, when applied, work every single time. Number one, I had to make 80 phone calls a day, Dad. Now, this doesn't mean sending out 80 emails or 100 LinkedIn requests or anything like that. Dad, if you would have seen my inbox of how many people hit me up every day asking for just 15 minutes of my time to explain why their product or service would help me. Dad, do you know over the last 30 days, I've replied to almost every one of these people. I set up a little more in email, and I figured if they could use a form, I'll send them a form back. And it said, hi, my name is Brian. I'm the CEO of Vocodia. I love that fact you're a salesperson. That's great. But hey, here's an idea. Why not take 15 minutes of your time, research my company, myself, and explain to me why your product or service would help me? And Dad, I didn't get any replies to any of them. Hundreds of these emails, and it kind of surprised me. And I realized that nobody's even reading these replies. They're waiting for that response, the callbacks. So they're waiting. And if I sit around waiting for people to call and say, hey, I got a check for you, I'm probably going to be a little hungry. Helps with the weight loss, but not the way I want to do it. So I realized by making 80 calls a day, 5 days a week, at the end of the year, assuming you take a couple weeks off of vacation, that's 20,000 contacts I've had. And out of those 20,000, I got to get at least one or two, right? Hopefully. So let me just do my 80 calls a day. Now that means if I have a proposal that's due tomorrow for the largest deal of my life, I still got to make my 80 calls. Because the weeks I don't and the days I don't, I'm going to have that lull in business. Now, out of that 80 calls, here's where things get different. Now, your first week calling, of course. Now, notice again, I'm saying phone calls, Dad. I'm not talking about emails. That's follow-ups. I want to talk to somebody because I believe the best business happens during a conversation. And can you have a conversation on email or text or messenger? It's a good way to contact, but I don't feel you can have a true conversation. Certain things get missed in text and emails. You know, you say a joke that may not come off as a joke, right? You might mean something in jest that's not there, or you're asking a question and they answer it differently, so then you got to ask that same question again. I'm going through the same thing with the lawyers right now, Dad. You know, we're filling out this S1 and there's all this paperwork, and the lawyers, they ask these questions. I don't even know what the questions are half the time. So, and then I reply to it, and they send an email, and I reply again, and 4 or 5 times later, it gets frustrating. And guess what I do at the end? I pick up a phone call. So I'm still going to be that old school guy who believes that I need to get on the phone to have some business happen, and that 80 phone calls a day works no matter what. Now, I know out of my 80 phone calls how many appointments I can get, and everybody's business will be different, but usually by the end of week 2, hopefully, you're getting a 1 to 5% appointment rate. That's it. Again, you're not going to get 50%, Dad. I just can't. But what's wrong with that? It's kind of like sometimes you have to dig a hole to get to the diamonds, and all that shovels is dirt and dirt and dirt. There's no money in there, right? I'm just wasting gas and time, or am I? Am I wasting time? Well, I'm not going to get to the diamond otherwise. So I'm going to make my phone calls. And by the way, what I was asked to do, Dad, you remember, is every time I got told no, I was like, yes! And I would write that down. Because I knew for every 20 no's, I would get a yes. So I took the no's and I started saying, hey, listen, how many no's did you get today? How many no's did you get today? How many no's did you get today? No no's? You're not doing any work. I don't want to hear your positives. Don't come up to me and tell me that we're working on this large deal. It's going to be huge. That's great. How many no's did you get today? You're not going to get yeses without no's, so get those no's, embrace them. There's nothing wrong with that. I learned that from you, Dad. I appreciate that. And Dad, something else I noticed. When we're setting those appointments, let's qualify them. Who are we speaking to? And what is the purpose of the appointment? Is it just to do a demonstration of technology or a product or our service? And that's okay if that's what it is. But is there a need? And just like I had all these people pushing me and asking for 15 minutes of my time, we've now got 15, maybe 30 minutes of somebody else's time. Am I going to just pull out my PowerPoint deck that I've gone through 50 times and I don't even know this person's industry? What vertical are they in? What can I learn about their pains? You know what a quick way I can learn about their pains? I'm going to go see what job postings they have. Oh, wow, they're looking for salespeople. Oh, they're looking for these people. Wow, they have a huge need of customer service people. Well, if they need some customer service people, I have a lot of sales. There's something going on. So there's a lot of public information to try to personalize that presentation for that individual. That doesn't mean just putting their logo up. Don't tell me you just put a logo on and it's personalized. Again, you've worked so hard to get to this diamond. I'm not going to just send it to Bob and just have him smash it with a hammer and make it pretty. No, I want to make sure this diamond looks good. I want to get the ultimate price for it. Now, by the way, I don't know anything about diamonds, right? But I do know there's 4 C's, and I know they cost a lot. So let's go ahead and use that same time and energy to present to our client that we finally have this opportunity with. And what are we trying to accomplish? Is it just a meet and greet, or is it to get business? I believe every call should be a sales call, even if you're gathering information. And by the way, on those appointments, and I don't know if this time's even close now, Corey, so yell at me because I'll keep talking. On these appointments, let's ask questions, Dad. I remember, Dad, the first thing you taught me was shut up and listen. Now, of course, I was like 2 years old when you said that, but I remember that point to this day. So I appreciate that. And even though I'm talking a lot now, I ask questions more than I talk about myself when we get into these appointments. And then it's the follow-up afterwards to get our sales. And guess what? Very quickly, you're going to notice that, hey, 80 appointments, or 400 phone calls, it becomes 5 or 10 appointments. 5 or 10 appointments becomes 2 or 3 proposals. 2 or 3 proposals becomes a deal. Believe it or not, it's a simple way of looking at it. Right now, our company itself is going through next year, right? We're looking at our budgets. What are we going to spend? And my team, who might be watching this live, is going to find out our new idea of how we're going to make our business even simpler going into next year. I'm going to say to my COO, CFO, all my C-level people, hey, hire everybody you want to hire. Let's go crazy. 10 people, 30 people, I don't care. But will that individual increase our revenue by $1 million. So if I have 50 people, I need to do 50 million a year. We have 100 people, we need to do 100 million a year. How simple is that in forecasting and trying to figure out a business plan? Now, I've done some math in the background. I know that's my number. Other businesses might need 500,000 a year or higher. But it's also our first real year. So year 2, we're going to go to 1.2. And by year 3, we have a 1.5 to 1.7 goal of revenue per employee, which right now my whole team is going to start freaking out and going, oh my God, we got to change the plan. But that's got to be it is. Now, by the way, I'm not a smart person. I didn't come up with Bernoulli's Principle. This Daniel Bernoulli did a couple hundred years ago. I learned it from this guy, something Musk. Anybody here of Twitter? Who wants a trivia question about Twitter real quick? Real quick trivia question, Dad. What color is the check mark? Everybody in this room is wrong, Dad. It's white. It's actually a blue circle around a white check mark. But they call it getting blue, Dad. And you realize that you can influence people. They've seen it 1,000 times. They think it's blue when it's white. Isn't that amazing, Dad? Gotta love it. But here's what he realized. He went in there and bought this company for a couple of bucks and said, hey, Twitter's revenue per person is about 700 grand. Facebook and Google's like 1.75. Chop half the people. I'm not saying that's the best answer, Dad, but there's some great lessons to be learned there. At the end of the day, Dad, what we're trying to do is this. We need to make sure our salespeople are selling and spending more time on doing that and not selling. And if we get that basic sales principles down, we could scale. There's technology to help us, right? Our CRMs, making sure we have our notes, our follow-ups are important. But we have to have that basic principle. And then we could fill up this bag with money much quicker when we implement them. So, Dad, I just want to say, I miss you. I love you and happy birthday. Thank you.
Okay, so let's be clear here.
Yeah.
At first, I thought you were role-playing, and I thought I needed to stand there and make eye contact because you were using me as your dad.
I was using the camera.
And I was thinking, wow, I don't feel that old.
Yeah.
But, okay. All right. But your dad is watching.
He was. He actually passed away 103 days ago, and today is his birthday.
No
So when you asked me to do this, I thought I would I would do it for him.
What an awesome tribute.
Thank you. Thank
to
you.
your
Yeah,
father.
thank you. Appreciate it.
So you have done some amazing things with Vocodia.
Yes, sir.
I love this story. Some of you may have heard it before. Actually, I want to hear it from you. Will you tell the story? You had one of the foremost minds in AI sitting on the other side of the table, and he didn't believe that you had done what you said you did.
It's correct. It was our early days. We had Jimmy, my partner and co-founders, did an amazing job on the technology, but it was in such an early form. There was no graphical user interface. Basically, you made a phone call and spoke to it. That's it. And so we had an investor lined up, so we thought, who just ghosted me. But I'm one of those buy or die. I'm going to keep calling you until you tell me to stop nicely. So after like 2 months, he said, man, Brian, you're persistent. He goes, I'm going to take your call and tell you what happened. He goes, I can't invest with your company because I believe it's fraud. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, scientist so-and-so, the one you did the demo for, she was on the call with me, heard it, and after we hung up said, that's impossible to be AI. He actually just has another agent on the phone talking to him and speaking to him, and it's all fraud, it's fake, it's not AI at all. So that was our first accusation of fraud, and it happened about 3 other times over the course of 9 months. To be clear, it's not fraud. But it was one of those things we left frustrated, but also excited about that, like, we must have something here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you had someone who had a conversation, didn't believe you. You programmed the AI with your own voice.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So the challenge in the AI space is when people want to hear a demo or recordings, and actually on our website, my main recording I used to demo is actually when I did a live call from the stage here 2 or 3 sessions ago. And I think the reason I did that was this. We found a competitor, and when we would listen to the competitor's recordings, Jimmy and I, this is 3 years ago, we're going crazy. We're like, how is the latency there? Like, we can't figure this out. But then we went to a conference and watched them do a live demo where there was 3 to 5 seconds in between the conversations. We went back to their website, pulled down their files and looked, and we actually realized they were edited. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to one day do a live demonstration, and thank to BA for letting me do that, to prove, A, that there is no latency, or very minimal, and B, that it is live. So when you send out these recordings, everybody says, oh, I could tell it's AI, because I told you it's AI, and of course you do. So my way around that sometimes is right before a meeting, if I have somebody, the AI will call them to reschedule. And then in the middle of them, let them know, by the way, it's AI, not Brian. And I've not one time ever had anybody catch on.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. So Vocodia, now you were looking at a public offering. Last time you were here, you were actually talking about that. Is that taking steps forward?
Based on advice of counsel, all I could say is the company's intention to have a NASDAQ offering in the first quarter of next year.
Wow. And how old is Vocodia now?
Under 2 years old.
Under 2 years from concept to public offer. Put your hands together for this guy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you.
Brian, I appreciate you very much. Is there anything we can do for you?
Next quarter, yes. Yeah, we'll talk then, right? Absolutely.
Okay, so you are behind a veil of secrecy. Next quarter, you're hoping to rip that veil back and give us more of an idea of what's going on.
We're actually having the good problems right now. Unfortunately, we cannot take any more clients on. We're just so backed up, and we don't want to have anybody getting frustrated. You know, nothing worse than signing up and wanting something, and then I can't get to you for 6 months.
Yep.
So we've temporarily, and I've heard of hiring freezes, but this is a customer freeze till let's just say probably January-ish would be my guess.
I see.
We'll remove that. But I will say that the clients we have, we're having the good problems where they're increasing their volume with us.
Yep.
So we've, over the last 3 months, we basically have tripled revenue. You know, it's going that fast. So hopefully, I'm just looking forward to next year so I could sleep.
Sleep is not for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Sleep is for the weak. Yeah.
I appreciate you being here. Put your hands together one more time for Brian, Mr. Podolak.